Hello, my name is Philip Shembo. I'm going to be presenting my portion of the slides, and I focused on digital audio and video, which many people would consider the holy grail of networking. That's because it's a whole lot easier to see and hear something than it is to just read it off of a sheet of paper. So, digital audio. Send some positive waves to someone. An audio wave is an acoustic wave that is one dimensional. They can be converted using an ADC to appear digitally. So, for example, in the case of my image, you could use the microphone to record yourself, and that little ADC will pick up the electronic currents from the microphone and convert them into binary numbers that will be placed onto a computer. Now, once on the computer can send it to a DAC or a speaker. The speaker will reconvert them and play them out for everybody at, let's say, the concert to hear. But what about audio compression? Because we have to have limitations. So, audio usually needs to be compressed to save on bandwidth and transfer times. It's just what has to be done. Because when you talk to someone, their ear picks it up, sends it up to their brain, does all that fancy stuff. But a computer doesn't have a brain, a computer doesn't have ears, which means that it takes more work for them to do this kind of stuff. So that's why we need to encode and decode, or in other words, we need to compress the data before sending it and then decompress the data at the destination. An example of compressed data is an MP3, which is a very common form of converted and compressed audio. You usually see it at like the end of your music and whatnot. Another version of it is advanced audio coding, or AAC, although it's not as well known. So, what about digital video? For example, the sticky note animation. The sticky note animation itself is not digital, however, we're viewing it on a digital device. And this is a perfect example of frames, which is the simplest digital form of a video. Frames use FPS. More frames per second means a more smoother video. So for example, watching a YouTube video at 60 FPS. Now each of these frames contain little pixels on a grid, and our eyes cannot distinguish all the pixels present on the monitor. That's why we're able to see the overall image that the video is trying to convey, the overall message, you could even say. So our brains take the big picture, avoid the individual pixels, and then display it to us. That's how our brains basically function. But to get a little more technical, whenever it comes down to digital video compression, that's where things get interesting. It is always a good idea to compress videos before sending them, because even a small video can quickly go over 100 megabytes per second. This is because of the amount of pixels and frames, which is X by Z, multiplied. 24 bits of color information per pixel, and the frame rate, because each image that's being displayed, even in the case, let's use a sticky note for example. In the case of the sticky note, you are using a lot of resources to get this animation done. Matter of fact, as you can see in this image, the person ends up using almost the entire pack of sticky notes. That's what's happening whenever you're sending audio. You are using the entire pack of sticky notes to send your audio. The bigger the audio, the more sticky notes you need to put onto it. This can exponentially grow very quickly. So for example, I recorded a 2-second video that I won't be showing. I just wanted to experiment. It was 480p at 30 FPS, and it was 6 megabytes in size, which is pretty big considering how small a 2-second video is. That's 2 seconds, and that's already 6 megabytes. That is almost enough to actually reach the limit on Discord, say, for example. And that's usually why people tend to run into issues like that whenever recording. So just to quickly go over some of the standard forms of JPEG and MPG. JPEG, most people end up using a JPG and a JPEG. There are other versions, but they're not as common. As for MPG, the most common forms are MP3 and MP4. MP3 are audio, like I said, you usually see it at like the end of your music if you downloaded them using Means, we're gonna say. And MP4 is usually video. Usually it has video. Well, usually it can be video and audio whenever it comes down to MP4. That's usually how it ends up working up. There are other versions like MP1, but that one was made all the way in like 1992, maybe even later, so it's not as common anymore. Anyways, my question is, true or false, is MP3 an example of a converted video? And that's pretty much the end of my slides. Thank you so much for listening.